Hey, hey guys, what's going on? I wanted to talk a little bit about the Trump rally that's happening tonight in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and why this is a deliberate attack on the movement of Black Lives Matter, and why it's also stupid because we just got through with a pandemic, and you have this large gathering of thousands of people at a rally, and also the historical significance of it. Tulsa, Oklahoma, for those that don't know, in the 1920s was a site of one of the worst massacres in the history of the United States. The United States government came in and actually bombed an entire affluent, um, productive black community and destroyed them. They did the same thing in Rosewood. And in those riots, in those days, was completely perpetrated by whites against blacks, just like the 1860s uh, draft riots here in New York City when they burned down a colored, um, the colored orphanage um, in the Lower East Side. That's not language that I use, but that's just what it was called. But they've done this over and over again in history, and they did it in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921. So they talk about, oh, black communities um, they can't be productive and they can't start productive communities. But even when they do try to start productive communities, whites white supremacists come in and destroy them. This is the case. This was the case with Tulsa, Oklahoma. So my thing is, why Tulsa? Why now? Why right after COVID? And why right after the day after Juneteenth? He's trying to send a deliberate political message that he's against this current uprising and current wave of sympathy towards racial injustice and directly against black activism and directly against Black Lives Matter. It's not, he's not, Trump is not known for his subtleties. Trump is known for his directness, and he's being very direct right now. You know what I mean? He he's doing it in Tulsa, and he's doing it the day after Juneteenth and in the midst of COVID. Number one, it's not smart because, like I said, we just got over the pandemic, and now you want to have this mass, large gathering of people. People are saying, well, here's the response people give. Well, oh, well, you didn't say anything about the protest for George Floyd, um, you know, possibly spreading COVID and everything. Yeah, but that was a protest. People were moving around. People were apart from each other, and they were mobile. This is a rally. This is a public gathering. People are going to be in close quarters to each other. People are going to be next to each other, interacting, sitting next to each other, possibly hugging each other, possibly, um, you know, slapping hands, slapping fives or whatever. This is different. You know, he could easily put this thing off until you know until all the governors give the go ahead. Look, Florida opened um, for quote unquote essential businesses like WWE a couple months, like 2 or 3 months ago. I made a video on it, and look, Florida has received a spike in cases on of COVID. So this is a direct shot not only at Black Lives Matter and not only at the current wave of sympathizers of victims of black police brutality, but also a shot to his supporters, who some of them believe that COVID is a complete conspiracy, that is a hoax by the Chinese government to shut down economic the so-called thriving economy that was thriving under Trump, and now um, it's faltering because of the shutdowns. That's what I think. I think that's really what's going on. It's not necessarily uh, uh, just because of his rallies. It's a direct shot. The places that he picks are strategic for certain reasons. He has an agenda that is anti-immigrant, so he'll pick the Panhandle of Florida. He has an agenda that is anti-black, so he'll pick Tulsa, Oklahoma, because he knows that the people on the opposing side and the people on his side know the historical significance of the Black Wall Street massacre of 1921. He knows that. You know what I'm saying? So he's playing right into their hands. Okay? They never really believed that there was a COVID pandemic to begin with, and if they did, they blamed it completely on the Chinese. Remember the Chinese flu comment a couple months ago? First of all, and another thing too, um, Trump himself completely flip flopped on this issue. At first, when it was just hitting China and it was just hitting Korea, he said that it was no big deal. All you had to do was wash your hands, especially when it was hitting Iran, because he's already declared Iran as an enemy. But when it started hitting Italy and it started hitting other European countries that he was friends with and he sympathized with, completely he switched his stance. So now he switched his stance back again to not believing that COVID is a big deal, right? And holding a mass rally, risking the citizens of Tulsa, Oklahoma to become sick and infected. If they feel like they want to get sick and get infected, just to go listen to this moron, fine, go ahead, do it. I hope you all die. You know, nah, seriously, I don't hope you all die. But if you're gonna risk your life to go listen to him listen to him talk like he's some kind of rock star, like he's some kind of celebrity. He's a politician. It, I mean, and then another thing too is like, okay, if his rally could be open, why can't concerts be open? Why can't this be open? Because they know that the CDC knows that it's still a risk. But Trump doesn't care about that. He doesn't even care about his own followers. He wants to have them all in one place, possibly con- possibly contracting COVID. But why Tulsa? Because he's doing it because again, strategic against Black Lives Matter. He wants to show that his base that uh, he's against Black Lives Matter, and then he got the nerve to say that he was the one that made Juneteenth popular. That because of him, because he originally scheduled the rally on June the 19th, but then he moved it to the next day. But why? Because he found out it was Juneteenth. He found out, and then he's going to take credit for popularizing Juneteenth. Meanwhile, Juneteenth has been being celebrated by African Americans since 1865, when the last slaves were free in Galveston, Texas. So how are you going to take credit for something like that? What are you, the white T.K. Kirkland? You were there for it all. you know, supposedly in your mind, you took credit for the peace deal in 2008 between North and South Korea, and you want to take credit for this. If reparations ever did get passed, Trump would take credit for it because he's an egomaniac. Okay, he's one of the most egotistical um, presidents there ever was. He's not humble in the least. Okay, but he's doing it strategically. He's not doing. He's doing it on the day strategically. He's doing it in the location strategically. It has a lot to do with rubbing it in the face of African Americans, specifically African American activists and left wing activists that were doing it in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the home of Black Wall Street. That's what I believe. Because even though he's an ignorant person and he's a dumb person, his handlers are not dumb. They make strategic moves. They've been doing it since Steve Bannon was his strategist back in 2016. That's how he won the election, by making strategic moves, saying strategic things. Ever since Trump announced his candidacy in 2015, on June the 15th, 2015, he's been making strategic moves. He attacked the Mexicans first. He attacked the Muslims. He attacked this. He attacked that. In his rhetoric, he's very strategic. In his actions, he's very strategic because his handlers are very strategic. So they know the significance of this day. They know the significance of this history. And that's why they're doing it in Tulsa. They're not doing it in any other city. Tulsa is the city. Why? Because of Black Wall Street. People are talking about not just Juneteenth, not just Cuomo recognizing Juneteenth as a state holiday in New York City, but also because people are talking about African American economic independence, and Black Wall Street symbolizes African American economic independence and African American economic recovery. And it once existed directly after slavery and no longer exists because of white racism and because of white supremacy, which Black Wall Street is a symbol of. Black Wall Street is a symbol of African American independence, African American affluence, and they didn't want to see that then, and they don't want to see it now. So that's why they're doing this protest. I mean, this rally in Tulsa. That's why I believe Tulsa is the spot. You know what I'm saying? Because okay, yeah, you could say, well, Tulsa is one of the reddest states out there. It is. Tulsa is very pro-Republican, but there's a lot of Republican cities. There's a lot of cities that are very pro-Republican, right? So why there? Strategic, strategic. I mean, people know this. People know this. The question is, why did he move it from to today instead of yesterday? Because he didn't want to. See, the thing is with Trump is he don't want to get too much heat. Like if he would have did it on the exact day, it would have got too much heat because they know it's Juneteenth and that's too much. But he'll do it the day after because he'll still get his supporters will still get the dog whistle, but but other people won't really pick up on it, particularly the mainstream media, where in our public schools we don't even learn about the Black Wall Street riots. We don't learn about the Tulsa riots, Black Wall Street, none of that. We don't learn about Roseville. We don't learn about Wilmington. We learn about L.A. We learn about Watts. We learn about the riots and the unrest that were perpetrated by African Americans against the society, but we never really learned about the other riots, the riots that were race riots, like the fact that 1919 was the bloodiest summer on history because white Americans kept attacking black Americans who were coming up from the South, migrating to northern cities, and they were upset that African Americans were migrating to northern cities, and they basically massacred them all over the country, but specifically in northern cities. Or the, like I said, the 1860s draft riots, where Irish immigrants massacred and murdered African Americans right here in New York City. We don't learn about that in history books because they want to present you in history class a narrative that is one sided. So the mainstream media might not know about that. So they say, oh, well, there's no significance to Tulsa. There's no significance to why he would just hold it in Tulsa. He just holds it in Tulsa because it's all Republicans or whatever. But there's a lot of states that are all Republicans, but why there? Tulsa, it has a significance. And people say, "Well, I'm rambling on here," but he's gonna ramble on over there. He's just gonna say the same thing over and over. But I guarantee you that he is gonna dog whistle. He's gonna use words like law and order. He's gonna use words like calling the protesters vigilantes, calling the protesters um, agitators. He's going to say this stuff because they want to paint the narrative that Black Lives Matter is exactly like these white supremacist groups, which it is not. It is different. Just like when Beyonce, right, did the Super Bowl in 2016, and I made a video on this. The video on this, my video on this is on Facebook. Um, my Facebook page, Jairo Vargas, where you could watch the night after the Super Bowl, that time when the Carolina Panthers played. I, I said that they always try to paint the Panthers as like the KK, like the black equivalent of KKK, when it wasn't. It wasn't like that at all. It was fighting against racial justice, not for racial exclusion. So how can you compare the two? They're apples and oranges. Just like comparing Black Lives Matter to a group like the Nazis. Come on, man. You make yourself sound really dumb. Republicans and conservatives, they say that, they make themselves sound dumb. You know? And this is a dogwood. This is like Tulsa is an insult. The fact that he's doing it in Tulsa on the anniversary of Black Wall Street and the day after Juneteenth, knowing that knowing that there is a virus out there that's killing people. He's risking his own supporters to be killed and to possibly contract a deadly disease, and they're walking right into the slaughter. They're like lambs into the slaughter because they love Trump so much. This kind of adoration towards a politician, towards any politician, is very dangerous. We saw this in 1930s Germany, and that's how Hitler was able to dehumanize uh, the people that he killed, because he was able to dehumanize them, and he was able to bring them to the level of cockroaches, just like in Rwanda. Same thing happened in Rwanda. Um, the Hutus in power were able to dehumanize the Tutsis, and then the Tutsis were taken out. Same thing in Yugoslavia. Why? Because they worshipped at the feet of these charismatic politicians. Trump is very charismatic, but if you allow yourself to be taken in by a charismatic leader, that will be the detriment to you. Peace, stay safe, and always look at the things they don't tell you in history class or in current events, because you never know when there is a conspiracy lurking. As far as COVID and the whole thing about the conspiracy and like China creating it in a lab in Wuhan, I heard things like that myself. But thing is, I don't really care because whether or not it came from China, the government in China, or from whatever, the fact is that it exists, and we should take precautions. We shouldn't be out there having MAGA rallies with hundreds of people. Peace. they don't care. They just want to uh, cause discord. They just want to cause havoc, and they just want to derail the momentum that the Justice for Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement is having. They don't care if people die. They'll sacrifice them. He'll sacrifice his MAGA supporters just to get his racist objectives on the table. Peace.